The Lords have been debating a proposal to reduce the size of the so-called upper chamber to a mere 600 peers. Let's have a listen.
The committee have been greatly encouraged by the response of noble Lords to our proposals, and indeed to those from those outside the House as well. For their part, the Government have made clear that they are interested in finding out whether the committee's conclusions command widespread support in the House. And I hope that in today's debate, which, as we can see, involves almost 100 noble Lords, that this will serve that purpose and demonstrate that the proposals have strong backing.
And I'm joined now by Baroness Anne Taylor. She was on the committee which has produced the report calling for a reduction in the size of the House of Lords. Welcome to the Daily Politics. So, reducing it by a quarter, 15-year terms, minimum of 20% crossbenchers. Why?
Well, there's a great deal of pressure and a great deal of criticism of the House of Lords because it is so large. I mean, a lot of people don't appreciate the work that the Lords does. They see us in the chamber, the picture you've got there of everybody in their ermine. That happens once every 2 years at the moment.
But you look so lovely in it.
Oh, really? But, I mean, they don't realise the work that goes on in committee. I'm sure Matthew would agree. A heck of a lot of really good work goes on in the House of Lords. But it is large. Prime Ministers have used the House of Lords to give rewards to friends, colleagues or whatever. And if we carry on like this, there will be no end to the size of the House of Lords. So what we're trying to do is not only reduce the size of the House of Lords now, but actually make sure that there is a sustainable reduction, and that's why we're suggesting a cap of 600.
Right, so the proposals are being debated.
Yes.
How are you going to progress forwards on this?
Well, the idea that is long-term, we should aim at 600. We should say that from now on, any new peer should serve a capped term of 15 years, and that will allow existing members to retire, and for every two that retire, only one person can be appointed. So that will allow existing members to serve out their term. They were promised life peerages. People can keep their peerages, but new members will only serve for 15 years. We're also saying, of course, that the Prime Minister, the monarch, can use their powers to actually create non-sitting peers. So if you want to recognise somebody for public service, you can actually give them a peerage, but you don't have to give them a seat in the House of Lords.
Is this radical enough? It sounds quite incremental to me.
It's not radical enough. All peers should be non-sitting. I mean, what has my lord, my lady and ermine and all that stuff got to do with the House of Lords' legislative job? They shouldn't be called Lords. We just need 200 or 300 people who really know their subject, 200 or 300 people who weren't once great civil engineers, but who are civil engineers now, who weren't once great doctors, but who are doctors now.
Who would appoint them, then?
You would have to have a body that was not within the control of the Prime Minister or the Leader of the Opposition.
There is such a body.
Walter Bagehot once said the cure for admiring the House of Lords is to watch it. And I think there's some truth in that.
You'd be surprised how many people actually do watch the House of Lords.
But do they admire it when they watch it?
Yeah, we get letters or emails saying, we've actually watched this debate, such body said this, what about that? But it is actually, you know, quite good quality debate very often.
But good quality debate may be, but you could still retain good quality debate with 200, 300 peers.
Well, we did originally, when we had the report from the Labour Party, we suggested 450 on the basis of the numbers that were necessary to fill the committees. And actually, we're not saying 600 and that's it forever. That's what we're suggesting. The House may come to a smaller number. Baroness Boothroyd has just spoken and said a significantly smaller number. I think she wants about 350.
That would be better.
As you would. So it's up for us. What we're trying to establish is the direction of travel. We are not going to get change by legislation. The government's made that very clear.
Because you won't get it through?
Partly because they won't get it through, and partly because any legislation that gives the House of Lords a legitimate democratic mandate will challenge the House of Commons more. And the last thing we want is two elected chambers at loggerheads with each other.
Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. We should have something called a Grand Revising Committee. And it should be an honour to serve on the committee, and you shouldn't serve for more than 5 years. You should be chosen according to your qualifications rather than to who you once were in politics or elsewhere. And you shouldn't have all the trappings, the ermine, the red carpets, the tea rooms, all that sort of stuff. Toss it all out, all the old codgers there. We've just got to change them.
I think they speak very highly of you too. Who's he talking about?
Exactly. I think he's sort of auditioning for a position there.
But what do you think of the idea, though? Do you think the public would support the idea of getting rid of all of the trappings and having it as a professional body that just scrutinises.
Well,
so no ermine and, yes, no cafes, no bars, none of that.
I think most workplaces have tea rooms, so, you know, you can,
but you know
you
what
can
I
question
mean.
the bars. I have no problems getting rid of the ermine. I've got no problems with the titles. But what we're really trying to focus on is what is the role of the House of Lords. It is to be the second chamber. It is to be the revising chamber. It is to hold the government to account. And we want to do that in a more focused way. And if we reduce the numbers, have a fixed term for new members, we will get more respect for the House and people will understand its role and see the actual value added that it gives to the country.
What about the political aspect of it? In terms of how they are appointed to this Grand Committee that you have thought about, would they still be political appointees? Would it represent the House of Commons in terms of its representation?
I would say not. I don't think we need more than one legislature, one elected legislature, and I think what you would be looking for in a Grand Revising Committee would be expertise, and I would have thought that your political inclinations should have very little to do with it.
Right, do you agree with that?
I think you do need expertise, and I think we have a great deal of expertise, but I think we've got to come forward with practical proposals, and that's where the political element comes in.
Too many of you,
because,
Anne.
well, there are too many, that's what we're saying.
Too many
we're saying
of you.
let's reduce it and make it more manageable, see it's more focused, and get more public respect.
Too many of you are people who once were something or once did something. There are too many onces in the House of Lords. I think that's what we need to get rid of.
As a oncer who is still there, you know, some of us get revived. I became a minister. I became a minister in defence, and you've got to have government ministers in the House of Lords.
But do you have to have as many of them? That's the point.
Well,
do you have to have as many people who did once have a job in government or as an advisor or working for a party?
It is a question of balance, and what we've said in this report, and what the House, I think, accepts, is that the crossbenchers should be at least 20%. And I think we recognise the role of crossbenchers and we appreciate the role of crossbenchers. But you do need the reality that comes from political experience as well.
One of the controversial elements of the report is that it makes no recommendations to change the status and election of hereditary peers or the 26 bishops. Why not?
Because that would require legislation. Personally, I'm committed to supporting any legislation that gets rid of the hereditary by-elections, and I would like to see the situation with the bishops change. I mean, it is really rather strange that we have one group of religious people there and not Catholics and Jews and Hindus and Muslims and the rest.
So that's not going to change?
But that won't change without legislation. Now, I think the bishops today have said that they accept the spirit of the report, good word from them, and they will look at cooperating in any way if the House is wanting to go in this direction. So I think there is scope for change. And we've also got a private member's bill from Lord Bruce Grocott, which actually would end the hereditary by-elections, which the hereditaries are not all against. The Countess of Mar actually said, you know, if you have hereditary by-elections, you're just making it all male, because there aren't women coming up through that route. So I think there is a build-up of support for getting rid of the hereditary by-elections. But this committee couldn't look at legislative changes because the government made it clear that they wouldn't support any at this stage.
Well, thank you for coming in and marking our cards.